What does the ancient wishing well hide, where the midwife of Jesus Christ rests? What revolution did the Indian scientists make, and how old is the oldest animation in history? About these finds and more, see in this video. Hi friend, you are on the KirTop channel. The secret language of the Ice Age. Rock paintings around the world archaeologists and scientists are still studying. They always want to see something that hasn't been seen before. And now researchers have found unique marks on the rock paintings. It is believed that these were not just chaotic marks, but the birth of a real language that people spoke during the Ice Age. In fact, hunter-gatherers from the Ice Age were capable of much more than just drawing animals on rocks. In their drawings, they showed not just the animals that surrounded them, but also recorded detailed information about their lives. These drawings are over 20,000 years old. For a long time, researchers believed that their meaning is much deeper than archaeologists previously thought. Often new discoveries are made by random people, and so it was now. The usual furniture restorer and amateur archaeologist came to the conclusion that the markings on the cave paintings indicated the life cycles of animals. At first glance, the random dots and stripes may appear to be part of the design, but Bacon argues that they reveal the record of information and links to the calendar, and take the form of a kind of writing. There are sequences of markings next to images of reindeer, wild horses, fish, and bison. Scientists compared the birth cycles of modern animals, took them as a standard, and found a certain pattern. With these symbols, people of the Upper Paleo period communicated with each other while writing. It is still impossible for us to understand exactly how their words or sounds sounded, but it can be said for sure that the combination of these symbols denoted events regarding animals, perhaps the periods of their mating or birth. It looks like some kind of instruction for zoologists or a farmer. Every person from that time understood in what period of time the mating of horses or the birth of the offspring of the reindeer takes place. For many, this may seem like an insignificant discovery in the field of archaeology, but in fact we can finally understand when the first writing began to appear on our planet. Ancient people were not nearly as stupid as we are told in history books. 2,000-year-old cemetery in Siberia. In Krasnoyarsk, Russia, workers were raking a mound and found old skeletons. It turned out that it was not just a hill, but a barrow, and there was a burial chamber underground. Approximate age of human remains is 2,000 years, and the most interesting thing is that they belong to a previously unknown culture. According to archaeologists, the culture was similar to the Scythians, whose numerous remains were found in the Crimea. Next to the skeletons, archaeologists found ritual weapons and artifacts. Based on these objects, it was possible to understand that the burial does not belong to the Tagar culture. There were no such artifacts in the culture of these people. Perhaps it was some kind of people from the Scythian group. Most of all, there were similarities only with them. A few years ago, one interesting burial was already found in Siberia, which is also about 2,000 years old. In Ust-Polui, then they found the burial of 5 dogs. They were buried with honors. This indicates that dogs for people in ancient times were not just pets. Not every person was buried in the place allotted for this, and even more so with expensive jewelry. While archaeologists in Siberia are trying to study ancient burials, scientists on the other side of the world have managed to solve an ancient grammatical puzzle. A mystery in the Amazon jungle. Padre Carlos Crespi Croce, an Italian missionary who spent most of his life serving in Ecuador, became one of the most enigmatic figures of the 20th century thanks to his extraordinary collection of artifacts. Working with the Shuar tribes in the Ecuadorian jungle, he acquired many ancient objects that some researchers believed could be evidence of an ancient, highly advanced civilization, and perhaps even contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Crespi's collection included strange metal plates engraved with symbols reminiscent of ancient writing, figurines depicting creatures with unusual features, and objects that many described as technologically sophisticated. Of particular intrigue were metal reliefs depicting creatures with elongated skulls, stars, and scenes reminiscent of space travel. Interestingly, there were no known civilizations in the region that could produce such complex items. Rumors about the collection spread after some visitors, including researchers, claimed to see evidence of extraterrestrial influence in it. Some of the artifacts were said to be made of metals that could not be identified. Crespi, however, was not looking for fame. He claimed to accept these items from local tribes in exchange for aid and food. The collection's connection to extraterrestrial civilizations becomes even more interesting when considering the mystery of the tunnels beneath Ecuador that are the subject of legend. The tunnels, known as the Teos system, are said to contain a library of metal books. Some theorists suggest that these tunnels were a base for an ancient race, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. The Crespi collection could have been part of these treasures. Unfortunately, after the death of Padre Crespi in 1982, the collection was destroyed by fire or stolen, and its fate remains unclear. What do you think? Could a missionary become the custodian of traces of an ancient space civilization hidden in the Amazon jungle? Armor made of 6,000 scales. Archaeologists in China's Jiangxi province have made a surprising discovery. A scaly composite armor that is over 2,000 years old has been found in the tomb of Liu He, the Western Han Dynasty ruler Hai Hong. Not only does the find demonstrate the advanced craftsmanship of the Han Dynasty, but it is also completely different from the typical single-material armor of the time. According to a report from the Provincial Institute of Archaeology and Cultural Relics, the plates were made of lacquered iron, copper, and leather, with many measuring just 1 centimeter in width and 0.2 centimeters in thickness. The restoration took about 2 years, with experts assembling about 6,000 pieces found piled up in the tomb's armory, alongside swords and knives. According to Yan Jun, the leader of the excavation team, their arrangement and size demonstrate an incredible level of craftsmanship previously unknown in Han Dynasty armor. 3 amazing artifacts. Archaeologists have made a discovery that could change our understanding of the history of ancient Egypt. The lost tomb of Pharaoh Thutmos II was recently found, an event comparable to the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. However, unlike the famous Golden Boy tomb, the tomb of Thutmos II was badly damaged. After the pharaoh's death, the room was flooded and most of the relics were probably moved to another location. One of the key artifacts is fragments of alabaster vessels decorated with the name of Thutmos II. These duck-shaped vessels were used in rituals and testified to the high status of their owner. The inscription on them helped confirm that the tomb did indeed belong to this pharaoh. Another important find is fragments of paintings that fell from the ceiling and walls. The researchers found that the ceiling was once painted blue and dotted with stars, and the walls were decorated with texts from the Book of Amduat, an ancient Egyptian text that tells of the journey of the sun god Ra in the afterlife. Such images were only found in the tombs of pharaohs and close nobles. Another artifact found was a wooden rod that could have been part of a spear or a ceremonial fan used for fanning the pharaoh. The shaft bears an inscription with the title of the king, which became further evidence that the tomb belonged to Thutmos II. Revolution in science. Sanskritologists consider this event a real revolution in science, and how this will affect the history of mankind I will tell further. The most famous sage of antiquity, Panini, was a poet and even a saint. Throughout his life, he traveled a lot and wrote a huge number of works and treatises, which, to varying degrees, influenced modern science. 2,500 years ago, Panini created a series of secret grammar rules that taught the correct pronunciation of words in ancient Sanskrit. For centuries, scientists from all over the world have tried to unravel this method. Sanskrit is a classical Indo-European language that originated in the Bronze Age in South Asia. Over time, it became the sacred language of the Hindus. The greatest scientific works on philosophy, mathematics, and history are written in this language. So that you understand how great this discovery is, then imagine that you cannot read. There are a huge number of books, magazines, advertising signs. You see it all, but you can't read a single word. And the method of reading Sanskrit, which was invented by Panini, allows you to read ancient scientific works as if they were in a language accessible to us, be it English or Spanish or any other language. To this day, this image is considered one of the greatest intellectual achievements in history. The Panini system includes 4,000 detailed rules that help decipher the ancient script. For 2,500 years, scholars have been misreading Sanskrit texts. As it turned out, at one stage of reading, several rules can be used at once, and which scientists could not understand. Therefore, most of the ancient texts have been completely misinterpreted. This is how one of the pages of Panini's text looks like, or rather its copy, made in the 18th century. The sage had an extraordinary mind and invented a cipher that has no analogues in the history of mankind. His system does not need new ideas at all. The more scientists come up with them, the further from the truth they are. The key is simplicity, and for many years, specialists themselves complicated the way of reading Sanskrit. The Indian scientist Rishi Rajpopat hacked the meta rule of the father of linguistics, Panini. Now you can withdraw absolutely any word in Sanskrit correctly. At all times and in any field of activity, there is one single rule. If the decision is very complex, then most likely it is wrong. I will not explain in detail how the text is deciphered and which rule applies in this or that case, so that the video does not become boring. You can find all this on the net. I can only say that Rishi Rajpopat solved the puzzle in a few minutes. After that, for several years, he rechecked his discovery. And the solution to the problem that has baffled all scientists for centuries has been found. India's contribution to world science is gigantic. Now scientists can decipher the ancient texts that are already available and will definitely decipher the new ones that archaeologists will find. And the whole world will learn about the ancient Indian scientists, whom we have not even heard of before. In the meantime, I'll tell you about an interesting find in the Egyptian tombs. Crocodile heads in the tomb. The Theban necropolis, located on the western bank of the Nile opposite Thebes in Upper Egypt, was used in ancient times for the ritual burials of most pharaohs. During regular excavations in this place, Polish archaeologists found the heads of crocodiles in the tombs of Egyptian nobles. These were the tombs of Cheti, an important official during the reign of Pharaoh Nebuchadnezzar Mentuhotep II, and some anonymous high-ranking official. In these tombs, 9 crocodile heads were found wrapped in cloth. The heads were not mummified as was common in ancient Egypt. The crocodiles belonged to the species Crocodilus niloticus, a large crocodile that lives in the fresh rivers of Africa. Unfortunately, the skulls of crocodiles were not complete. Somewhere was lacking a part of the jaw, somewhere a fragment of the skull. The first excavations in this place were carried out more than 50 years ago, and then the bones of animals were not so valued by archaeologists and researchers. And if the bones were found, they were simply thrown into one pile or burned. Then it was believed that there is no value in the bones of animals. It was much easier to find a mummy and sell it to collectors, or process it into flour and sell it as medicine. Gold jewelry has also been valued at all times. And who needs a crocodile skull that is thousands of years old? In ancient Egypt, crocodiles were an object of worship in the form of the god Sebek. Sebek is associated with the Nile or West African crocodile and is represented either entirely as a predator or as a man with the head of a crocodile. The Forgotten Stone. In the heart of Lebanon, not far from the ancient temple complex of Baalbek, lies one of the largest processed stone blocks in history. This giant monolith, known as the Forgotten Stone, is impressive in size, 19.6 meter long, 6 meter wide, and at least 5.5 meters high. Its weight is estimated at around 1,500 tons, the equivalent of 200 African elephants. Some researchers believe that the stone was intended for an even grander structure than Baalbek itself. However, for unknown reasons, it was never delivered to the construction site. The Baalbek temple complex, famous for its colossal megaliths, was built during the Roman rule in the first 3rd centuries AD. However, the mysterious platforms of giant blocks, including the famous trilithon, could have appeared much earlier. Who were the ancient builders who processed and attempted to move such massive stones? Perhaps Baalbek is the legacy of an older and more highly developed civilization, the traces of which remain unsolved. Merer's Diary. In 2013, archaeologists Pierre Tallet and Gregory Marouard discovered papyrus scrolls at the site of an ancient harbor on the Red Sea coast, which are the oldest known documents. Dating back to the 27th year of Khufu's reign, these records were created by workers directly involved in the construction of the pyramid. Among them are ledgers describing the distribution of resources: bread, beer, grain, and meat to feed 20,000 workers. An even more unique find was the diary of Inspector Merer, who led a team of 200 people. The diary describes in detail the process of transporting limestone blocks from the quarries of Tura to Giza. These blocks used to clad the pyramid were transported along the Nile in wooden boats during the annual flood. Each boat could hold up to 80 tons of stone, and Merer's crew managed to make 2 or 3 trips per 10-day week, transporting around 1,000 blocks per season. Particularly notable is the mention of the noble Ankaf, Khufu's half-brother, who oversaw the construction of the pyramid. The diary also records for the first time the original name of the pyramid, Akhet Khufu, which translates as Horizon of Khufu. These records confirm the existence of a complex infrastructure, including canals, harbors, and storage facilities. The workers not only transported materials, but also built ports and managed resources. The archives were likely buried in Wadi al-Jarf after Khufu's death, when work was suspended. Egyptologists consider these discoveries key to understanding how the ancient Egyptians were able to build some of the most impressive structures in human history. Melted steps. The stairs at the Temple of Hathor in Dendera raise many questions among archaeologists and researchers. These steps, located in one of the best-preserved temples of ancient Egypt, look as if they were exposed to incredibly high temperatures, which could have led to their deformation and partial melting. The surface of the steps shows unusual bends and recessed areas that are not typical for the normal wear of stone structures. There are various theories to explain this phenomenon. One hypothesis suggests that the steps could have been damaged as a result of some unknown thermal impact, for example, ritual fires or processes associated with ancient technologies. Another theory points to possible construction errors. If the stones for the steps were formed directly on site from a liquid solution, then the interruption of the hardening process could have led to an irregular shape and softness of the material. Scientists are still studying this phenomenon, adding another mystery to the rich heritage of ancient Egypt. 260-day calendar. How many days are there in a year? Anyone on our planet knows. But for most people, this number sounds like 365, and for the inhabitants of some parts of Mesoamerica, it is the number 260. As well as 3,000 years ago, these peoples use calendars in which there are 260 days a year. And just the other day, researchers found the earliest evidence that ancient stone structures were used to mark the seasons. With the help of LiDAR and aerial photography, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of architectural complexes that have been aligned to facilitate synchronized observations of the sunrise and sunset of the sun, moon, and other celestial objects in accordance with this 260-day cycle. This calendar was most likely invented based on the cycles of corn, growing, and human reproduction. The earliest documented evidence of the use of this calendar was a glyph depicting the 7 deer, one of the days of the calendar, as part of a 3rd century BC fresco in Guatemala. Unfortunately, these cultures did not leave written records of earlier periods, so it was difficult for scientists to prove that people used the 260-day cycle of the year until archaeologists found the stone remains of a giant calendar. Judging by the size of this structure, it was of great importance to the Olmecs, Maya, and other cultures of that time, at least during the period when corn cultivation became widespread in the region. Excavating in the impenetrable jungle is a very difficult task, so aerial photography with LiDAR has become a real miracle for archaeologists. Thanks to such opportunities, researchers can know in advance where to conduct their excavations. In addition to the stone calendar, experts have found many other buildings, pyramids, and temples, and soon in my next videos I will definitely talk about them. In the meantime, we will go to Israel where, according to archaeologists, they found the tomb of the midwife of Christ. Mysterious tomb in Israel. There are many places for pilgrimage on our planet, and each place has its own legend or history. So in Israel, archaeologists decided to explore the place of pilgrimage of early Christians. Many centuries ago, and to this day, it is believed that this is the tomb of a woman who was present at the birth of Christ. Well, the question is, did Christ's midwife ever exist? Not far from the ancient city of Lachish, 50 kilometers from Jerusalem, back in 1984, marauders found the tomb of Salome. 2,000 years ago, this cave was the burial place of a wealthy Jewish family. The cave consists of several chambers, in the walls of which burial niches are carved. In ancient times, the tomb was robbed by other marauders. Everything valuable was taken out of the tomb, the coffins were broken, and the remains of people were lying on the ground. The tomb is decorated with carvings and mosaics. Such a tomb is not unique, and archaeologists have found quite a few of these throughout Israel. In addition to skeletons, traces of the presence of people of the early Byzantine period were found here. The remains of oil lamps, which are associated with pilgrims. There were also many inscriptions on the walls. Judging by the text, they were left by believers. Some of the inscriptions were in Arabic. What could attract Christian pilgrims to the Jewish tomb? After analyzing the inscriptions on the walls, scientists came to the conclusion that a certain Salome, who was the midwife of Christ, was buried here. This woman is mentioned in pictures and in the Gospel of James. Archaeologists suggest that the name Salome could be carved on one of the ossuaries. Some of the early Christians familiar with the Gospel of James may have seen this and reported to others that they had found the tomb of a midwife holding the Christ child in her arms. To ensure the flow of pilgrims, such information is quite enough. No one will check whether the midwife of Jesus is really buried in this place. It is enough for people to simply say this and they already believe it.
The oldest map of the world has been deciphered. The British Museum has revealed the secret of one of the oldest maps of the world, a clay tablet from Babylon, created about 3,000 years ago. The so-called Imago Mundi, found in the city of Abu Haba, Sipar, in Iraq, has been kept in the museum's collection since 1882. The tablet depicts a simplified whole world as imagined by the inhabitants of Mesopotamia. The center is occupied by a rectangle of the Euphrates River. Around it are circles and rectangles denoting cities, including Babylon. Everything is surrounded by a bitter river, the salty waters of the Persian Gulf, and the Mediterranean Sea. According to cuneiform specialist Irving Finkel, this is a schematic reflection of the space where people lived and died, and beyond it, according to the tablet, there were 8 remote regions. The Akkadian text on the top and back of the map tells the story of the creation of the world and recounts one version of the story of the Great Flood. According to it, around 1800 BC, God commanded King Utnapishtim to build an ark, the remains of which were supposedly left behind a bitter river on a mountainside. A missing fragment of the tablet discovered in 1995 helped scientists decipher the story more accurately. In addition, the Babylonian god Marduk is mentioned, as well as fantastic creatures such as the scorpion man and the lion-headed bird Anzu, confirming the rich mythological world of the Babylonians.
The mysterious harpy. The Queen of the Night relief, created around 1800 BC, is one of the most enigmatic artifacts of Mesopotamia. Also known as the Burney relief, it depicts a winged goddess with bird claws instead of feet, standing on the backs of 2 lions. On either side of her are owls, symbolizing power over the darkness of the night and the spirit world. The identity of the depicted goddess remains a subject of debate. Some researchers believe that this is Ishtar, Inanna, the Babylonian goddess of love, war, and fertility. Others suggest that the relief depicts Ereshkigal, the dark mistress of the underworld, Ishtar's sister. The symbolism of the relief indicates the power and supernatural strength of the goddess. The relief was probably a cult object associated with religious rituals or magical practices. Its rich detail and monumentality speak to the importance of the depicted deity in the beliefs of the era. Today, this artifact is kept in the British Museum.
Mysterious mask. A strange iridium artifact found in Florida challenges traditional ideas about ancient civilizations. According to researchers, this object is 12,000 years old and is made of iridium, a metal that is extremely rare on Earth and most often found in meteorites. The artifact is striking in its delicacy and skillful processing, which suggests that the ancient craftsmen had technologies that were significantly ahead of their time. An image is engraved on the surface of the object, reminiscent of the deity Viracocha, known in the Inca culture as the creator of all things. According to legend, Viracocha came from Lake Titicaca, bringing light and knowledge. This image may be evidence of a connection between ancient peoples and an extraterrestrial civilization, which would explain the use of rare meteorite material to create this artifact. Historians believe that this object was stolen by Spanish conquistadors in 1715 and taken away on the ship La Concepcion. The ship sank in a storm, leaving much of its cargo, including other artifacts, on the ocean floor. The mask washed up on the beach and is believed by experts to be just a small part of the $5 billion lost treasure.
The oldest animation in history. If you thought before that animation was invented in the 19th to 20th century, then you are mistaken. Archaeologists have found something similar to the animation, and this artifact is about 5,200 years old. A unique vase was discovered in 1967, but the image on it could only be seen now. At the Burnt City, an archaeological site in southeastern Iran, researchers have found a goblet with scorched red sketches of a jumping goat that comes to life when the vase is spun. To be precise, in 5 consecutive images, the horned goat is jumping up and down. Researchers believe that in this way he is trying to eat leaves from the Assyrian tree of life. At least it looks like that when you twist the vase. You can see this vase in the National Museum of Iran. Persian potters in ancient times were fascinated by the movement of animals and came up with such animation to capture this event. Thus, the first animation in history appeared. While in the territory of ancient Iran, they tried to capture a goat in motion. In Germany, people in ancient times used the wishing well. Wooden wishing well. On the territory of Bavaria in Germany, archaeologists have found the remains of a well-preserved wooden well. People used it as early as the Bronze Age, however. They used it differently than they do today. Researchers have found many ritual offerings, jewelry, and remains of pottery. In ancient times, our ancestors could use the well in the same way as we throw coins into the water for good luck. The area of today's town of Germering in Upper Bavaria uses to be an ancient settlement. This is confirmed by multiple finds in this region. In the excavations covering an area of about 7 hectares, many buildings and artifacts from the Bronze Age to the early Middle Ages were found. Many wells were found here from where people extracted water, but one well was unusual. This well is more than 3,000 years old. It is located at a height of 5 meters and its depth is much greater than others. It rarely happens when a well is preserved for 3,000 years. The wooden walls of the well were preserved at the bottom, although they were slightly damp from groundwater. Archaeologists found here 26 bronze pins for clothes, a bracelet, 2 metal spirals, an animal tooth, amber beads, and more than 70 ceramic vessels. Such filling fundamentally distinguishes this well from the rest at the excavation site. The condition of these objects indicates that they were not just thrown into the well, but lowered smoothly and carefully. Even now, in fountains around the world, you can find many artifacts and coins that people throw for good luck or to return to this place. Such is human psychology. It is easier for us to believe in all kinds of superstitions and luck than to start doing something. So people believed many thousands of years ago when they threw their jewelry into the well and made wishes. And in order to learn about new finds of archaeologists, I strongly recommend that you subscribe to our YouTube. Thanks for your views. Bye, everyone.